Hello all, welcome back to my channel Texans. Today we will discuss about Azure Network Services. In my previous video, we discussed about Azure Compute Services like functions, app services. Today we will discuss about virtual network, application gateway, load balancer and content delivery network. So let's get started. What is virtual network? Virtual network enables many types of Azure resources such as Azure VMs to securely communicate each other, the internet and the on-premise network. For example, I created two applications in Azure. One is web application, the second one is SQL application. So these two applications need to communicate to each other so that when I send the data, it goes to SQL, and whenever user requests something, so the data should come from SQL to app. So for that thing, virtual network comes into the picture. If my both of the applications VM1 and VM2 will be on the same virtual network, then they'll be able to communicate with each other. That's the whole purpose of virtual network. As you can see in the diagram, there are 6 VMs connected to the same virtual network. So these 6 VMs will be able to talk to each other. There may be a scenario when customer have SQL data at their data center and all the web applications and rest of the thing at the Azure side. So how they will communicate to each other? Through virtual private network. So virtual network helps to communicate if the VMs are within the Azure, and if we want to talk to outside network, then VPN comes handy. Now let's see in the portal how we can create the virtual network. To create the virtual network, we can search here also virtual network and we can create. Click on add, mention the subscription, resource name, mention the name. So I mention all of the details, let's say Texans application. To create the virtual network, I mention all of the details. Resource group, name. So this virtual network I will attach with all of the VMs who will be using for Texans application purpose so that all of the machines can talk to each other. Click on next. We can mention this is the IP address space. Click on security, tags, review and create. Click on create. Now the deployment is in progress. Once it's completed, it will notify me. Since the virtual network has been created, let's see how we can attach these two machines. So click on virtual machines. So I mention all of the details. Resource group, virtual machine name, region, size, username and password which we can use to connect to the VMs. Click on disk, click on networking. In networking tab, we can select the VMs that we have created. So this one I created just now. So we can attach. So that is the way whenever while creating the virtual machine, we can connect to the specific virtual network. Let's say if I create 4 virtual machines, I can connect to this specific virtual network. In that case, all of my 4 VMs will be able to communicate to each other. So basically that is the use of virtual network. Now let's discuss about application gateway. Application Gateway is a web traffic load balancer that enables you to manage traffic to your web applications. It is the connection through which users connect to your application. With Application Gateway, you can traffic based on your source IP address and port to the destination IP address and port. You can also help product a web application with a web application firewall, redirection, session, affinity to keep a user on the same server and many more configuration options. As you can see the diagram, this diagram, let's say if a user is trying to access the application, so it goes through the application gateway. Application gateway have some rules configured inside it. So it says if there is URL with A, it goes to a specific web app. If the request comes with B, it will redirect to the different app server. If the request is with C, it will redirect to third app server. So basically we can configure our rules. Based on that, it will reroute the request to a specific server. That is the whole use of application gateway. Load balancer and application gateway, they have the same purpose. Basically it just receives the request and redirects to the specific server. The only difference is application gateway uses 80 port only. It's applicable for 80 port only, and load balancer is applicable for while load balancer uses TCP and UDP protocols basically. So let's take a scenario. If the request is coming for image file, so we can configure our rules at the application gateway. Okay, if that's an image request, go to the image server. If that's a data request, go to the database server. So that's how application gateway works. Now let's see in the portal. Search here application gateways. Click on add and mention all of the details. So here I mention all of the details. Application gateway name. This is the gateway for my Texans application. So Texans gateway, region, tier, virtual network I selected. I just created the virtual network. That's what I selected here. Click on front end. Here we can choose the IP because it's an application gateway. So we need to choose if it's a public, let's say. So we can use any IP which is there, because the request comes to that IP, then it will redirect based on the rules configured in the application gateway. So I select private, backend. I need to add a backend pool. Why? Because if the request is coming, there should be a pool. Only then the request will be redirected to the servers. If there is no server defined, how we can reroute to the servers? So add a backend pool. So here we can mention the name, and okay, my backend pool will be a virtual machine. So virtual machine, and mention the virtual machine, or maybe IP address. You can define IP address as well. Click on add. Now click on configuration. See, that's what I was talking about. There are front end IPs. This is it. There is my backend pool. So I need to create a rule as well. So let's create a rule. Yeah, so here is the rule defined. Now we can click on tags and review and create. Then click on create. I am not explaining this in very detail by taking a project work maybe, because this is not the part of fundamentals. We will cover this in very much detail when I will be creating developer tutorials. So that's the overview of application gateway. Now let's understand what is load balancer. Load balancer can provide scale for your application and create high availability for your services. Yes, that's the purpose only for the load balancers. If one machine is not working, it redirects to the second machine. So the purpose is to make sure my VM is highly available. And load balancers supports inbound and outbound scenarios, provide low latency and high throughput, and scales up to million of flows for all TCP and UDP applications. As I said earlier, it supports TCP and UDP, not port 80, not for the web browsers basically. So you can use load balancer with incoming traffic, internal traffic across Azure services, port forwarding for specific traffic, or outbound connectivity for VM in your virtual machines. As you can see in the diagram, this is the TCP port 80. So based on this is my public load balancer, and this is the tier, web tier. There are 3 VMs. So based on the availability, it redirects to any of the VMs. Let's see this in portal. We can search here load balancer. Here it is. Click on add. Mention all of the details. Is name, region. Load balancer have its own IP. So all the load balancer IP will be tagged to all of the backend servers basically. So the request will always come to the load balancer IP. Then it will go to the backend servers based on the availability. So we need to here mention the IP address also. So I mention all of the details: resource group, name, region. Okay, create new IP for load balancer, or we can use existing one also. What will be the name? The Texans load balancer. Next tags, review, create. So basically that is how we create load balancer. Now what is content delivery network? Content delivery network is a distributed network servers that can efficiently deliver web contents to the user. It is a way to get content to the user in their local region to minimize latency. CDN can be hosted in Azure or any other location. You can cache content at strategically placed physical nodes across the world and provide better performance to end users. The whole purpose of CDN is to reduce the latency so that users need to wait so much if they hit something on the internet and the request and the response comes in a long time. So the whole purpose is to minimize the latency. As you can see in the diagram, when visitor clicks on the URL and wants to access the application, it will go to the DNS, then CDN name. If the cache is available, it will directly go to the visitor. I mean, CDN will directly send the request to the user if the request cache is stored in the CDN. If not, then it will go to the origin server and fetch the response and send to the user. But before sending the user, it will store the content in their own space so that when next time user will request the same data, CDN need not to go again to the origin server. It will directly fetch from their own store and just give it to the user. So if it's the first time, the request goes to the CDN. CDN sends the request to the origin server. Then origin server sends the request to CDN and CDN pass to the user. But if the same request is coming from multiple users, so CDN stores in the cache, and then whenever visitor request, it goes to the CDN and CDN basically just sends the response. So origin server doesn't come into the picture. So that is why it minimizes the latency. Let's see this in the portal. We can search here CDN. Click on add. So that's where we just mentioned the name. So that is the place where we can create the CDN profiles and we can select the pricing tier and click on create. We will configure this in detail in our developer tutorials. For fundamentals, this is enough. So this is it for today's video. If you have any questions, please write down in comment section. You can also email us at mytechsense@gmail.com or visit our website https://techsenseconsulting.com. In this video, we discuss about Azure Network Services. In my upcoming video, we will discuss about Azure Database Services. So compute and networking is done. We will discuss about database services. So if you like the video, please hit the like button and subscribe to my channel. Thank you so much.